Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast. We've got a bonus segment that we're actually starting this week where I, Matt Conner, am going to sit down with a site expert from a team that the Chiefs are playing in the upcoming week just to get to know them a little bit better. Now, you already know that we have game previews throughout the week from different people like Patrick Allen, Matt Verderam, or myself, Sterling Holmes. But sometimes it's nice to get a perspective from the other side. And so on that note, I'd like to introduce Leigh Oleszczak, covering the Cincinnati Bengals for Fansided over at stripehype.com. Leigh, how are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us for this new segment. We realized we wanted to start getting more insider info about who the Chiefs are playing, or at least to get outside of our own homerism, if you will. It's easy to kind of look through Chiefs colored glasses at the enemy and think, oh yeah, the Chiefs are this so appreciate you joining the show. Want to talk about the upcoming matchup of all the games remaining on the Chiefs schedule. This is the only big hurdle, and it's actually looming like a juggernaut. The Bengals are red hot right now. Jamar Chase may be coming back. We'll talk about all this. And then, of course, there's who beats Patrick Mahomes twice in one season. I mean,
Joe Burrow, that's who. Yeah.
Yeah. Chiefs fans have to at least admit this is big. This is tough. I want to start there just from a Bengals fan perspective. What's the view there? What's the excitement level like? What's the emotional temperature in the room, I guess I want to ask.
Well, the team started off slow this year, and I think after the Super Bowl, the magical run to the Super Bowl that they had last year, and that, they beat the Chiefs in the AFC title game, which was crazy. I don't think anyone would have predicted that season was going to go that way. So they were a little humbled when the team started 0-2 this year and just frankly looked bad. But since then, they've gone 7-2. They've been real, like you said, they are red hot right now. And fans just, I think, feel that. The defense is playing really well despite all the injuries the team has had. Joe Burrow's playing at an MVP level. I think fans probably feel that if the team plays the way they did against the Titans this past weekend, there's not a team that can beat them. And I truly believe that.
Very few teams can actually feel that way and have some substance to it. Mm-hmm. When you say you agree with that, can you go back to maybe some of the early season, if they started out slow, what started to click that wasn't clicking?
A lot of it, and this was the big change they made this offseason. They really went after rebuilding that offensive line. We all saw them just get whooped in the postseason. Joe Burrow got sacked 7 times in the Super Bowl. They could not enter this season and not work on that offensive line. And so that was what they did. They added Alex Kappa, they added Ted Karras, they added La'el Collins. That's the center, right guard, and right tackle. Then they drafted Cordell Volson, who wasn't supposed to start, but he played well in the summer. He got the starting left guard job. Jonah Williams is the only starting offensive lineman for the Bengals last year that is back. And he ties the league, or he's in first in the league in sacks allowed. So it's been kind of up and down with this Bengals offensive line. The first 2 games, Burrow got sacked 13 times. So that was kind of a big reason why they struggled in those first 2 games. He just could not get any time to do anything. And when he has time to throw the ball, the Chiefs fans have seen it. Magic can usually happen, especially when he has Chase out there, Higgins, Boyd, all those guys. So that was a big part of it. The offensive line, I'm not going to say that they're there yet. It's a new group. They're still trying to feel things out and figure out how to play together. But in the last 3 games, the most sacks they've given up in a game is 2. Now, they haven't gone up against a pass rush like Kansas City since week 2 when they played the Cowboys and Burrow got rocked in that game. So that's a big reason why I think the turnaround has been there. And Burrow also, he just tends to kind of start season slow. He had the appendectomy over the offseason, a week before the preseason started. So he didn't play at all in the preseason. So that rust is going to be there for that. Now that he's adjusted, he's cooking.
Have you been surprised by this win streak at the same time that Chase has been out of the lineup? And can you talk about how the offense has looked maybe in spite of that loss? It's amazing to me that they've caught fire without this pillar of a player.
Yeah, Chase is awesome. I mean, he's a fantastic player. So that when he did go down against the Falcons, I think that was in week 8, there was some worry. I mean, Burrow has always really leaned on him as kind of his go-to guy. So Then the next week, Halloween night, Monday Night Football, they get whooped by the Cleveland Browns. And it's just something about the Browns. I think it's the same with like the Chiefs and the Titans. It's always, they just have their number, and they looked awful. And a lot of people turned to that and said, oh, Burrow can't win without Chase. And it was overblown. Burrow is a very good quarterback. Chase is a great receiver, but they have T. Higgins. They have Tyler Boyd. Hayden Hurst has been a really good addition this year. And after that game, I think Burrow heard kind of you can't win games without Chase. And I think that pissed him off, quite frankly. And since then, him and Higgins have been, like this. They've been cooking all season or in those 3 games since then. And we've seen that. I mean, granted, they played the Steelers and the Panthers, but they did beat a really good Titans team, and Higgins had a huge game. So Higgins has been awesome. And that's a big reason why I did not think they would be this good without Chase, but he's coming back, hopefully. So it's just going to get better from here, I think Bengals fans feel like.
Let's talk about just that real quick, that uncertainty there, because, Jamar Chase has been out for weeks. It feels like maybe there's been some inclination, at least on social media, that he maybe would have played last week if it would have been the Chiefs on the schedule or something. I mean, at least that's been what Chiefs Kingdom is telling themselves, that everyone comes back to play whenever they come. Of course, down.
Yeah. That's what Chase is doing. He just wants to come back to play the Chiefs, right? I'm being sarcastic.
These are the things we tell ourselves, right? And so I guess I just wonder for you, like he's limited in practice early this week. Like, do you get the sense he's going to play unknown?
I would say yes. This is a huge game. So I would imagine he probably plays. That's been kind of the word this week. And Burrow said last week he actually thought he'd play against the Titans, and then he didn't end up playing. So okay. I think he probably comes back, but I think there's probably a chance that the day of, if they don't feel he can give his best, why put him out there if he's going to risk further injury? But again, big game, a lot on the line. I would imagine if he can go in any capacity, he's probably going to play this weekend. And, just to make Chiefs fans mad, of course he's going to play. So,
of course, for the sake of review, he set a record for the most receiving yards ever put up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Ever. I mean,
and then he did the gritty. Yeah.
He's that combustible. But the shadow that he creates, I just a real quick aside, I'm so glad you brought up T. Higgins and how good he is. Even as an outsider there, I've always felt really bullish about Higgins because I loved him coming out in the draft. And I think if obviously Chase is the best receiver there, but I think most people would obviously also say Chase is a top 5 NFL receiver, or maybe 10 overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think Higgins could be wide receiver 1 on half the teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? That they have
over half for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen what the Texans are doing? Some of these teams, you put Higgins on there and it's just totally different. He's so good, and he's still got a year left on his contract. But as Chiefs fans saw with Tyreek Hill, there maybe could be some drama there this offseason. We saw a lot of receivers who wanted to get paid like wide receiver 1s kind of get traded away. And that could be something the Bengals have to deal with this offseason. And they have Chase. They're in a good position with that. But he's fantastic. They have 2 number 1 receivers. And Tyler Boyd hasn't been as effective this year, but he even could be in that category too. He's probably more wide receiver 2 at this point, but when he's good, he's very good. So they've got a lot of weapons, and that's what makes them a dangerous team.
You were talking about what's at stake this weekend earlier. That's certainly true for the Chiefs, and we've talked about that on the podcast in episodes past about they're in control of first place in their division, in the AFC. That coveted first round bye coming at week 19 is so huge
because it's the only one now. There used to be 2, and now there's just the one. So it's massive to get that.
Yeah, you're totally right. I guess if you could speak from Cincinnati's perspective, what would Bengals fans say is at stake? How is the AFC North looking? Are the Bengals chasing that number 1 seed too with so much football you have to play?
Yeah, actually, that was what I was going to say. We were talking about how important that number 1 seed is. And while they're not in first place in their division, the number 1 seed's still at play here. They've gotten so many key tiebreakers, except the one against the Ravens, who, of course, lead their division. but they have the tiebreaker against the Titans. They have it against the Jets. They have it against the Dolphins. They play the Patriots here in a couple weeks. Those are key tiebreakers that they have and against the Patriots that they need if they want to for sure get into the playoffs. And if they beat the Chiefs, they're only, because the Chiefs would have 3 losses, the Bengals would still only have 4. They're still in a position to get that top spot. If they lose, that isn't happening. They're going to have 5 losses. The Chiefs would have 2. It would take a colossal, Russell Wilson style meltdown for them to get that number 1 seed then at that point. And the AFC North's probably going to be out of the question then at that point too, because the Ravens, they don't play anyone down the stretch. So if the 2 have the same record going into that final game of the season and the Bengals win that game, they win the division. And that's crazy because they were 0-3 in their division after their first 3 divisional games. And they beat the Steelers a couple weeks ago, so they're 1-3. If they run the table, they can be that number 1 seed, and that's crazy because you would not have thought that after they started the season 0-2 that they could be in that position.
Yeah. Coming in, how worrisome do this year's Chiefs look to like Bengals fans? Like are they worried about the offense with Tyreek gone? Is it just, of course, you're always worried about it because of Mahomes? I guess I just kind of worry what's on the worry list for the Bengals.
There's usually 2 different types of fans, and there's the fans that are like, our team's the best no matter what, and then there's the fans that are a little more reasonable and realistic. Mahomes, he's the front runner for MVP. He's been amazing this year, even without Tyreek Hill. I don't think anyone would have predicted he would have done what he's doing this year without Tyreek Hill. He's obviously incredible. I think Bengals fans like to look at the 2 matchups last year, which I know Chiefs fans just love talking about those matchups last year. But I think Bengals fans like to look at those and go, Burrow beat him twice. We fell behind in both those games. We're going to be fine no matter what. And when the season ends, you got to kind of put that in the rearview mirror and just move on because the slate's wiped clean. And I'm hoping the Bengals don't fall into that trap of, we beat them twice last year and once on their turf in the AFC title game. And I think Chiefs fans and the Chiefs are taking the Bengals a lot more seriously this year because of that. Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what we see from each team kind of out of the gate. The Chiefs started red hot in both those games, and then just the Bengals defense has been really good at making adjustments in the second half. And that's been the game. That's what's decided the game in both of their matchups last year. So we'll see if it comes down to an Evan McPherson kick once again.
You mentioned injuries on the defensive side. Can you talk about what are the defensive concerns coming into Sunday afternoon?
Oddly enough, the injuries are in their secondary and with their pass defense. And they played Kenny Pickett. They played, I don't know who played for the Panthers that week, PJ Walker. They played not very good offenses during that time, but their pass defense has been okay. Chidobe Awuzie got hurt, and he's a really big loss for them. So they have not played a quarterback like Mahomes since that happened. Their biggest weakness on defense is actually their pass rush. They're tied for the second fewest sacks this year with 17. And Matthew Judon of the Patriots has 13. So to put it into perspective, they just, for whatever reason, they're just not getting home to the quarterback this year. And I don't know if that changes this week against Mahomes with this being such a big game, or if it just continues. And it's been frustrating too, because they have Trey Hendrickson, they have Sam Hubbard, they have BJ Hill, they have all these guys that should be getting after the quarterback, and they're not. And that's been very frustrating this season for Bengals fans.
Yeah, is there any reason or understanding why last year they were able to finish maybe some of those pressures and this year they're not, or is that the question?
That's honestly, for me, that's a question. I don't know what it was. They would go in spurts last year where there'd just be games where they wouldn't get anything. And then, of course, in the AFC title game, they were explosive against the Chiefs in that department. So it really does just kind of depend. We'll see. We'll see. I wish I had the answer to that question for you. Sure.
Well, I'll bet the Bengals do too, actually, right? I mean, if you knew it was wrong,
yeah, exactly.
Then you could actually fix that. Well, Leigh, it's been great to chat with you. I'd love to leave here with a final prediction. The Bengals won twice last year. What do you think about this one?
I'm never going to get invited back on again. So I might as well just say, I think it's going to be close. I do think the Bengals are going to win because I said earlier, if they play the way they played against the Titans, who are a playoff team, not as good as the Chiefs, obviously, I don't think anyone can really beat them. When everything's clicking, their defense is good, and all the weapons are kind of there for Joe Burrow. there's not really any team that I see beating them. And I know Chiefs fans feel the same way about their team, of course.
Sure.
I'm going to say the Bengals are going to win. I think, even though I've said the Bengals defense is good, I do think it's going to be pretty high scoring because they haven't played a quarterback like Mahomes. They've played a lot of backup quarterbacks this year. I think that it's going to be probably a shaky first half for the Bengals, but I think they bounce back in the second half and come out and win in the final minute or so.
Boy, that script doesn't sound familiar, right?
I know. I'm sorry.
No,
I really am.
It's just sad for Chiefs fans thinking, oh, if that's the
I wasn't even trying to
we're all going to run tonight.
Those memories for you guys. That's really the way I could see it going is the same story, because it feels like that with Chiefs games sometimes. It's like, really, this again? But yeah. I hope the Bengals take this game as serious as the Chiefs are taking it. I saw Justin Reid was talking some smack, and he was referring to T. Higgins or Hayden Hurst as T. Higgins, and Bengals fans didn't like that. So we'll see how the team responds, if there's some showboating, and it doesn't help the Chiefs that it's in Cincinnati either.
Right. Well, Leigh, you've been great on the show. Thanks so much. You've been so kind with your time. Appreciate it. I don't want to say good luck to the Bengals.
You don't have to. It's okay.
But good luck to you as you cover the Bengals. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.